What would your life look like if fear was not an option? Find out in the new series, Them, the Scare. It's an all-new installment of the horror anthology coming to Prime Video on April 25th.
The series takes place in Los Angeles in the early 90s, with the city on the edge of complete chaos. Deborah Ayerinde returns this season as LAPD homicide detective Dawn Reeve, who has been assigned to solve a new case that has left even the most hardened detective shaken. To find the Southside Slayer. As she gives everything to uncover the truth, something horrific and supernatural begins to haunt her and her family.
Them, the Scare features the legendary Pam Grier, Luke James, Wayne Knight, plus many more, and is sure to keep you guessing at every turn. Horror fans, get ready for your new obsession. This is something you do not want to miss.
And remember, fear is not an option. Watch Them, the Scare on Prime Video, premiering on April 25th.
Slashers, huh? What's your favorite scary movie?
Not that one.
And welcome back to Horror Queers. We're talking, I like your script and I want to be in it. We're talking, aren't you dying to know what's so special about the special? And we're talking, capital X, capital Z. And I'm Joe.
And I'm Trace, and we're talking Death to the Demoness, Allegra Geller.
Or to Ted Pikel.
Well, I mean, that's the end of the movie, Joe. I don't want to spoil it right away.
Or Yevgeny Nourish. Honestly, we're just trying to kill a bunch of people in this movie.
But by the end of the movie, you have absolutely no idea what's real and what's not, which is, of course, part of the point. Everyone, we are discussing David Cronenberg's eXistenZ. This was a relatively new watch for me. This is my second time watching it, but I watched it for the first time last year at your behest, Joe.
Okay, interesting. Is it because we had just covered Videodrome and I said, hey, you should watch eXistenZ next?
I think that's what it was, honestly. And there was a 4K set that Vinegar Syndrome put out. No sponsor, y'all. I'm just promoting it for free because I'm nice. But,
Sure.
But no, so I bought it and I watched it and I was like, yeah. This is very much a me movie. I love this movie.
It's a weird little oddity. I'm not going to lie. I do have slight post-traumatic stress disorder coming out of this movie because this is actually one of 6 movies that I watched a ton because originally I was going to do my PhD thesis on this film and a couple of others.
So you watched it like 20 times?
So many times.
Oh, no.
Here's the thing. I still really, really like it because it's still Cronenberg and it is a lot of fun and all these other things.
It is. And I'm actually very curious as to how many of our listeners have actually seen this before watching it because this movie kind of got buried when it came out in 1999.
100% did. Yeah.
But okay, well, before I get too much further, let me bring in our guest who is waiting in the wings, everyone. She is the co-host of the Carnal Extremities podcast, which pairs up extreme horror films with extreme music to satisfy all of those draconian desires. Please welcome Vannah Taylor.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm so excited to be here.
So excited to have you. I'm curious, had you seen eXistenZ before coming on here?
I have. I've surprisingly only seen it like once or twice before rewatching it for the pod. Yeah, I don't know. It kind of flew under the radar, even though I'm like such a huge Cronenberg fan. I was almost like disappointed with myself, especially after watching it. I was like,
It feels very Cronenberg, right?
Yeah, it's like quintessential Cronenberg.
But I think it's because it's coming in a later period where he's been doing some austere, other slightly weird projects. So, for me, when this came out, I was so excited because it finally felt like a bit of a return to form. And that's mean to me because Cronenberg films can take a lot of different forms. But the reality is that this feels like the kind of film that he was making back in the 80s, which is kind of his heyday.
Yeah, honestly, this is really the last like full-on body horror film he does for, honestly, maybe until 2022's Crimes of the Future?
Which is also described as something of a sequel to this movie and Videodrome.
Well, and actually, because we were saying offline, Vannah, you said that you love Videodrome. So is that kind of like your peak Cronenberg?
Yeah, I think Videodrome is just everything to me. I don't know. It's just like, I remember the first time I watched it, I was just so changed. But yeah, I felt the same way with eXistenZ. I kind of consider those two with Crimes of the Future to be like an unofficial trilogy
Right.
in a way. And I also really hate to make comparisons to his son's films, but I think
Yeah.
that there's a lot that is in conversation with each other. They're not exactly the same, but there's a lot of interesting through lines, I guess you could say, especially like, you know, with Possessor, I would say.
Yeah.
Even down to the fucking Jennifer Jason Leigh of it all, right?
Exactly.
Well, and I will say, I mean, so listeners, if you remember our episode on Videodrome, I wasn't the hugest fan of Videodrome. I did come around more to it after revisiting it for our episode on it. It's still not my favorite Cronenberg film, but I actually do prefer eXistenZ. I really, really, really like this quite a bit. And
Nice.
I don't know, maybe it's because I was am a gamer kid, so I find this theme inherently more interesting, even though it, as we've said, it's in conversation with the themes of Videodrome, but maybe I find eXistenZ more relatable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it feels a bit more akin to when you were growing up, like the concerns of your generation.
Right, absolutely. But, yeah, I mean, well, why don't we just dive into this? Because shockingly, while I went through every single bonus feature on this Vinegar Syndrome 4K, there isn't really a ton of, like, story about the making of this outside of just how they designed a lot of the production in it, which is impressive, but I don't think it's a movie that you, like, that jumps out when you're watching and be like, oh yeah, the production design of eXistenZ, you know?
Well, funnily enough, that was one of the complaints back in 99 is people, yes, folks, we are going to address, this comes out in 99, The Matrix comes out in 99, The 13th Floor comes out in 99. They're all sort of virtual reality technophobia films that are very concerned about Y2K in the future. But I think a lot of people wrongfully look at this compared to other VR gaming movies and they say, oh, it's kind of drab. Like, I don't know why it's all so boring. And it's like, well, that's the point.
Okay, y'all are going to think I'm crazy, but honestly, the movie that I was like, oh, like I would totally double feature these two because they seem very similar. It's this movie and the 2019 film Serenity with Matthew McConaughey and Anne Hathaway. And if you've never seen Serenity, I've unfortunately just spoiled it for you because that movie's about a video game.
Well, but it's also completely obvious, and that's a terrible film, Trey.
No, I know. Okay, but the way that both films handle the video game, where it looks quote unquote normal, it looks like the real world. There's nothing particularly extravagant about it except Serenity's on an island.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what I think makes the film work so well. This film, not Serenity. Is it? Yeah, like that's part of it, right? That you're never supposed to know if what you are watching is the real world or if it's in the game, eXistenZ. And honestly, I don't ever really know where we are.
No. That's what I love about the end of this film in particular is that, obviously we end on this note of uncertainty, but I love that the movie kind of challenges you to reflect, did we ever actually see reality? Like, we see so many levels to different parts of the game that you could reasonably walk out and say, it was all a simulation.
Well, and then that aspect of this movie reminds me a lot of Christopher Nolan's Inception.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't know if that was ever intentional, but it does seem like this movie was influential despite not being a critical or commercial darling.
You could just say it's a flop.
It's a flop. This movie was a big flop. But anyway, okay. So eXistenZ is David Cronenberg's first original screenplay since 1983's Videodrome. So I think it makes sense that these two films are in conversation with each other. But the idea came to him after he conducted an interview with the writer Salman Rushdie for a Canadian magazine called Shift in 1995. But at that point, he had an inkling that he might want to do a movie that reflected in some way Rushdie's situation, which was, in 1988, what this guy did was he published a novel called The Satanic Verses that caused immediate controversy in the Islamic world because of what was seen by some to be an irreverent depiction of the Prophet Muhammad. So he was a writer who had written something that he felt was relatively innocent, but he found himself condemned to death by a militant Islamic group for what he had written. They had put a fatwa out on his life, a fatwa being a legal ruling on a point of Islamic law given by a qualified Islamic jurist in response to a question posed by a private individual, judge, or government. So I don't know who posed the question, but someone was like, should we kill this guy for what he did with Muhammad? And that's kind of what happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he was like, okay, I'm going to combine both of those things. And then he also was like, they got into a conversation about, well, are video games, are games art? Can they be art? And I don't know if this sprang from a Roger Ebert review, but I know for a fact that Roger Ebert was vehemently like, no, video games are not art. So this might have just been the conversation we were having at the time as video games and graphics were evolving.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've talked a fair amount about video games. Ben, I'm not going to presume to know how old you are, but depending on when you grow up, it's like they're either mindless entertainment, things that make kids angry, and or revolutionary, right? Like, gaming is also the largest industry, well, one of the largest industries after things like porn and arms dealing in the world. So like you can make a shit ton of money off games. So when games start to become more realistic, people start to have more thoughtful conversations about, yeah, are they art? And also, what are they doing to us as a society?
I think it's so crazy that like this came out in 1999 and I feel like this exact conversation just continues to get more and more relevant. Like, you know, we have actual VR, like I'm not exactly sure what the technology was, you know, regarding that in 1999, but also I think a lot of recent conversations with AI and things like that probably, because to me this is a lot. I mean, obviously it's about games, but it's more about like hyper reality and how that erases any actual anchor to reality, where like now I can't tell if, like, I've seen videos of people and they're like AI, and I'm like, you can't even tell the difference in most cases, and that's really scary.
I would also argue that this movie is in conversation with the ideas of William Gibson and like cyberpunk and that kind of thing. So that's partially why I reference Y2K and technophobia, because we really ended up having a lot of black and white conversations about how scared we were of technology taking over things and making it seem more real than real, or would we lose sight of what reality was like, as you said, Vannah. So yeah, I mean, this film is coming out at a very specific moment in time, but the questions have only become more relevant, particularly as the technology gets better.
I was going to say, like, if anything, this film is more relevant today, even now, than it was in 1990. I mean, again, like, didn't we just have an enormous conversation and debate and, I don't know, a war on Twitter about the AI use in Late Night with the Devil? Hey, everyone, go listen to our Patreon episode on that, by the way.
Yeah, there we go.
So, but I love that, right? Because it's like, okay, well, yeah, in this movie, the realists are fighting for, again, like reality, like, you know, fighting for a real world. But just what you said, Van, it's like, well, no, it's also now what we're fighting for is non-real things masquerading as real things, like AI art taking over jobs of workers.
Right.
Anyway, so, eXistenZ was originally pitched to MGM, but they did not greenlight it, saying that the narrative structure was too kind of all over the place. I just think in general, it's a Cronenberg movie, so you're kind of like, it's a little weird, man. I don't know.
Sure.
Enter producer Robert Lantis, whom Cronenberg had just worked on the 1996 film Crash with. We don't have an episode on that, but we have discussed it plenty of times before. Go watch Crash, everyone.
Yeah, we did a guest spot with Reina Cervante.
Yes, I just meant that on our show, but yes, Reina. But when MGM passed, Cronenberg went to him and he came on board, noting that the screenplay draft he had read is pretty much exactly what was shot. And I think a part of that is because he wasn't really there when they were filming, because this Lantis guy, he was the CEO of a large publicly traded company called Alliance, and at this time, what?
Sorry, it's just so funny. Like, he's a super famous movie producer in Canada, and Alliance is like one of the biggest studios. Well, it'd be like saying, hey, folks, have you heard of like Blumhouse or MGM?
Well, okay, at this time, he was selling Alliance and launching a separate company called Serendipity. That's why I said Serendipity earlier.
Oh, that's a blooper. You'll find out later on in the year.
But part of his arrangement with the new owners of Alliance was that the films that had already started production there would migrate over to Serendipity, which is why you see both logos at the top of this film.
Right.
But because while eXistenZ was filming, he was dealing with this transition. So he was basically never on set to actually produce this movie. He was just, here's your money.
All right.
Now, the US distributor for eXistenZ was Miramax, and this being the film that it is, it went to their Dimension Films banner. So I think we can all guess where this is going, right? Interestingly enough, there wasn't a lot said about the Weinsteins on this 4K set, be it like an archival interview or even a modern one, because there were plenty of new interviews on this. I can only assume they just didn't want to like get more hot water, even though at this point, like, what's going to happen? But producer Robert Lantos said this. Dimension was owned by the Weinstein brothers, so you can assume that there were a lot of notes, and there were. Cronenberg reacted with diplomacy and politeness. Now, if you ask him which of these notes were actually acted upon, that's a different question. But his reaction to their notes was very polite.
That's so funny. And anybody, if you've never seen the way that David Cronenberg, speaks or just how he composes himself, he's kind of a Wes Craven figure. He's very nice, very gentle, very quiet, but he is incredibly intelligent. And I'm just imagining him getting really stupid notes from the Weinsteins and just being like, I will not be doing this. No, thank you.
And it's so interesting because the woman who was the art director, the art director, by the way, is like basically the top level assistant to the production designer. We have a production designer that Cronenberg has pretty much always worked with in Carol Spire, but the art director in this film was Tamara Deverell. This was her second film working with Cronenberg. She also worked on Crash with him, but she had just worked on Mimic. She worked on Mimic between this and Crash. And
oh, fuck. Well, of course, yes, because they were both shot in Toronto. Folks, we do have a Patreon episode on Mimic. Infamously fucked with movie
by the Weinsteins. So I think that they probably shared some more stories. Also, a lot of her art design for the gun and some of the creatures were pulled from her inspiration from working on Mimic, by the way, which I think you can see that.
Oh, so gooey. Mm-hmm.
Yes. But I do wonder, though, because it's clear Cronenberg did not take some of these notes or most of these notes the Weinsteins offered him. So I wonder if that's part of the reason why this movie got buried.
We may never know, but also anybody who has access to Cronenberg, ask that question.
So yeah, this leads me to the release of the film, which was unsurprisingly botched. It was released on April 23rd, 1999, 4 weeks after The Matrix had come out.
Mm-hmm.
It was dumped into 256 theaters.
Jesus Christ.
So it opened in the number 15 slot with a little over $800,000. This, by the way, The Matrix's fourth week of release, it was the number one movie that weekend with $12 million.
Mm-hmm. And Trace, how much did this one cost?
Well, so that's the thing. So this goes to gross $2.9 million worldwide against an estimated production budget of... Okay, here's the thing. On this Blu-ray, like that art designer is like, we didn't really have a lot of money to work with, so we had to like get really creative. All reported budgets for this movie were $15 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I saw that same piece and I also clocked that sentiment because if I remember, this was the most expensive film ever made in Canada, or if it wasn't the most expensive, it was like right up there. So, I mean, maybe she was saying in comparison to other films, right. But this movie has a higher budget than Crash.
Absolutely. And I don't really think you see a lot of the budget. It's not like a big film. Honestly, the film feels relatively small in scope, even though we're seemingly dealing with like world-defining stuff here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because they even talk about this one really tricky shot where they actually had to use a lot of green screen and FX work. And you look at it in the film and it's a seamless shot where they're leaving the trout farm and going to the Chinese food restaurant. And it's like, oh, those locations were, kilometers apart. And you're just like, oh, so this was... Oh, okay, 1999, this was hard for you to do. Got it.
Well, and that's the thing, even the trout farm, like, they built all of that. So you can watch them making all this. It's like, yeah, I see it. It's just not like a movie that's particularly showy about its budget, I don't think. Because there's also not that many, well, there are effects. There aren't, like, Videodrome levels of effects in this movie.
Right, yeah.
But luckily, critical reception was mostly positive. We are looking at a 75% on Rotten Tomatoes with an average score of 6.7 out of 10. And Letterboxd users have given it a 7.2 out of 10.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, people like it. I do think, I know for its 20th anniversary back in 2019, I think I saw more think pieces coming out around it. Again, kind of doing the whole, like, forget The Matrix, watch Cronenberg's eXistenZ. I say watch both.
Right.
But I hope more people start discovering it.
Yeah, we buried the lead. We're doing this because it's the 25th anniversary this week.
Oh, well, there you go. We're only 5 years late, Joe.
Well.
But yeah, well, why don't we dive into what happens in this movie, if you can figure it out?
Oh boy, okay. Here's an adventure in the making. So we begin in a church, and there is an event moderator who is played by Christopher Eccleston, who I don't think had been cast as Doctor Who yet, so this is a very fun thing for fans of that.
And this is the only scene of the movie. Well, I was going to say the only one he's in. He does pop up at the end very quickly.
Yeah, there's a couple of people who basically have de facto cameos in this film, and you just think, oh, okay, I guess we just like these folks, and we wanted to work with them, however briefly.
Sure does remind me of Serenity.
Yeah, well.
I know that was your favorite movie of 2019.
That was my least favorite film of that year. I hated it.
It's such a wild... I can't believe that movie was made and got released. It's, again, just go watch Serenity. It's bad, but
really do not. Mm-mm.
But it's kind of one of those, again, how did this get made type movies?
Yeah. And you know what? I bet you that film had a bigger budget than $30 million.
Honestly, I think it might rival Uwe Boll's House of the Dead for the number of times they spin around a character when they walk into a scene.
I hate it. I hate it so much, Vannah. It's honestly just such an ugly film.
Truthfully, I spoiled it because the twist ending of this movie is they're in a video game, but it's the more they explain it, the stupider it gets.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Well, and I would argue that, yes, Trace, I think your comparison is actually apt, but the difference to me, apart from the fact that Cronenberg has a much stronger visual eye, is just that I think eXistenZ gets more interesting the more you watch it and the more you dig into it, whereas Serenity honestly just has the twist. It's the kind of film that people made fun of M. Night for delivering back in the day, 100%. Even though I would argue M. Night never even did this.
Well, 100%. I mean, eXistenZ is at least asking and positing lofty questions. Serenity is not doing any of that, and it just offers a twist, the video game twist. Yeah. It's wouldn't it be wild if this was all a video game? Yeah. The end. Exactly. Yes, exactly that.
Okay, sorry. So we're still starting this movie. So yeah, we have an event moderator, and he introduces the game pod goddess, Allegra Geller. Not gonna lie, I love every fucking name in this movie so much.
Right? Who is Allegra? Pikel?
Mm-hmm. It's so weird. Yeah. So Allegra Geller is played by Jennifer Jason Leigh, and she takes the stage to introduce herself to this focus group. So she's carrying her new game in a ski boot, and she explains that this new game is called eXistenZ, capital X, capital Z. And of course, that's how you know it's Canadian, because we don't say Z.
Wait.
Or is it the reverse? Do we say Z and you say Z?
Americans do not say Z.
So we say Z and you say Z. There we go. I think I've just learned both, but...
So you were wrong, but yes, continue.
There we go. I fuck it up every time.
It's fine.
I also love that every time we introduce a game, we always have to learn who the game developer is. This feels true to life for especially contemporary games, right? Where it's oh, okay, who put this out? Can we trust them? So we learned that eXistenZ is from Antenna Research. And it's going to be not just a whole new game, but it's a whole new game system. And this is what she pulls out of the fucking ski boot. And this thing is body horror right from the top.
And I will tell you, so in one of these featurettes, they have the definition of what the game pod is. So in the world of this film, this is what a game pod, or basically your controller of the game, is. It says... basically an animal grown from fertilized amphibian eggs, stuffed with synthetic DNA. Because it's an animal, it has a spine, bones, and muscle, and is susceptible to disease. Which, the only thing I find unrealistic about this, and Cronenberg, he wasn't experienced in video games. He wasn't in the world of video games. He just thought the idea was a good concept. I don't believe they wouldn't have tried to make this flesh sack look...
better,
less horrific,
less horrifying, less like a tumor. I'm curious, Vannah, what was your first impression when you see this pod?
Oh my, it's just he's such a freak. I love, that's what I love about Cronenberg. There always has to be some weird fleshy thing for the characters to caress with their finger. Yeah, it's the knobs are nipples in a way. And
Yeah,
it's
like nubbins.
The fact that it like plugs into you like it's an umbilical cord. It's just so like it's just so on brand. And each time they insert it, I have to flinch just a little bit because it's so visceral.
I'm glad you said that because honestly, I get a weird kind of satisfaction when they pop it in because there's a sound that accompanies it, and the sound I find very satisfying.
Yeah, I do a little ooh like every time. I'm like, ooh, hello.
No, it's like when a USB port, or like a MacBook charger, like clicks, with the port on the side.
Yeah. And I appreciate that you said that it's a little bit ooh, but it's also a little bit ooh. Like you always get a reaction from somebody when they stick it in, which is, I mean, let's just lay it on the table, folks. This is a sexual film.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Just a little bit.
Just a touch. Which is funny, though, because in some ways it does have that almost sterile sexuality that Crash has. Like, there isn't fun sexuality in this film, but I would say the film itself is deeply sexual.
And that is absolutely intentional. When we get to the Willem Dafoe scene, there's definitely some queer stuff going on there. Homosexual stuff.
Literally the reason we're covering this film.
Yeah. It's also just interesting because like the world of tech and video games, like when you think of controllers, you think of like wires and like microchips. You wouldn't think of something like biotechnical. So it's just such a, but of course it's like Cronenberg has to put that, stamp on it.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm sure, like I would never show my parents this movie, but but no, but here's the thing, because I think that by watching this, my parents would be like, they need to see how we got to this point in the world where everyone is okay sticking these flesh things in their back, because that would be too hard of a concept for them to grasp. And again, that's not really the point of the movie, obviously, but I think for some viewers, like, they'll be like, what?
Which, I mean, is interesting because of how much we, as a society, inject literally into our flesh.
Yep.
Like this time around, I was thinking a lot about beauty standards because that's something that plays a lot into hyperrealism and like people who have no actual concept of what your body is supposed to look like, because we see people who are like literally sculpted by, doctors and like things like veneers and things like that. And it's the idea of like what humans are supposed to look like is already being so twisted, and the things that you will inject or change or shave off. And I'm like, well, I mean, I don't know. Adding a little game port's maybe not like, I'd probably do that before I do some of the things people are doing nowadays.
That's true.
100%. And the reality is you're right, Vanna. Like, this movie just takes it one step further into slight body horror. But I would argue the way it's presented, I mean, there's a fear of it. This idea that when you start to plug tech into your body, you change who you are, you change the way you see the world. But that's not far off from what we do in real life. Like, we are all in some ways cyborgs, because hello, if you wear glasses, you are fucking augmenting your body using tech. Like, we all do this.
I'm even, because I there's another version of this movie. The one thing I'm surprised that we don't really do is change people's physical appearance to be quote unquote better or more ideal in this movie. But that's an entirely different like thesis that the film would have to go into. And that's not what we're doing here. But I did like clock that Allegra's hair gets more crimped when she's in well, she's already in the game, I guess. But like once she goes into another level.
Hair.
Yeah.
Her hair is like the zigzag part and the crimp. It's just so, it's like 1999. I love it.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's interesting that you say that, Trace, because you're absolutely right. We don't modify the way that people look from one game level to the next in terms of like, oh, nobody gets fatter, nobody gets uglier, nobody gets demonstrably pretty. You could argue some of the clothing choices become a little bit more attractive or more futuristic. But what is interesting is that we learn as the movie progresses that people can change the game based on what values and ideas they bring into this world, right? So at the end, we'll learn, oh, it was concerning that there was this anti-game ideology introduced into the focus group. But we also learned that people fall back onto sort of gross stereotypes. So like the first time I watched this in 99, before I was, my woke standing on the platform of social justice. I was like very uncomfortable with the Chinese waiter character. And I love the fact that we get to see him out of the quote unquote game world at the end, and he doesn't have this ridiculously stereotypical accent.
Yeah.
And, you know, you could argue, well, some people do, and that's actually not that offensive. But like we lean into certain stereotypes about certain types of people. And I think that's where some of the naming conventions also come in.
I mean, I think that honestly, the most offensive part of that scene is Michael just calling him the Chinese waiter.
Yeah. I mean, it's also reflective of the world, right? Where we say, oh, let's go to the country gas station, and we go to a place and it's literally called country gas station.
Yeah. It's interesting because, you know, I guess our main characters don't seem to be different, but that's part of the fact that he's trying not to let on that we don't know when the game starts or ends versus like revealing these people that we just saw in the game. It felt very much like, you know, you have like certain archetypes or like classes when you like start a game, or you get like which class are you going to choose or something like that. And almost as if there's like a auto assign or something. I don't know. Or like you're like picking your skin tone or something.
It's,
and you're
it's like Avatar when you mate with that bird thing.
You're like, oh, there's not really like something in my, you know, I don't know. I'm wondering if I'm like wondering too much about the programming of some fake game in this weird, but I'm, you know, I was thinking about like that kind of thing where people are almost placed or, you know, almost like more like role play, like when you're doing like tabletop role play and you end up assuming certain roles because, well, we already have like this class, so we need someone in this class for our party and things like that. Yeah.
There's only so many different types of roles to be played, and obviously Allegra and Ted are going to fulfill the two dominant ones, but yeah, I mean, some of it also feels like, okay, movie parameters. We've got Jennifer Jason Leigh and we've got Jude Law, and they're both smoking hot. So obviously they're going to be the leads, and then we're going to cast the rest of them with, you know, character actors from Toronto and the surrounding area.
But even like calling eXistenZ a game, I feel like, because this to me is just a virtual world. Like, I know there are game elements, and we'll get into them as Allegra kind of tells you more about it. But at the same time, I'm like, this is just a world that you go live in. Like, what is the game at play? And I feel like hearing the word game devalues it for some people.
Sure.
But
yeah, that's why it feels more like a campaign. Like I mentioned, like tabletop role play. It's like, it's a world, or it's like a set of maps, and there are items and things or that you can encounter, but like everything else is like on the fly, you know, as they're doing, which was really interesting too, because this was something else that I was like, well, maybe this is just because this was all part of the game. Like, we never saw reality in the first place, but the whole time I was like, she made this game. How come she doesn't know what's happening? you know? Like, I was thinking about like our idea of a game developer. If, you know, if I was thinking too much in our reality of like, you know, what her understanding of her game would be. And then I was like, oh, I know, I guess this is different and I need to not think that way, but
no, but I think those are normal. I mean, because again, your human brain is trying to piece all this together, and it's one of those things where it was so much of Cronenberg's films, which is why I think I had such a hard time with Videodrome for the longest time until I really sat down and like tried to analyze it. Is that there are maybe these kind of like logical inconsistency questions that you'll have, but that's, I said this before, it's not the point, right? Like we're dealing with bigger questions, so the minutia isn't really important, but some people will nitpick that minutia.
Oh, and they absolutely did. Like, a bunch of people said, oh, this game is too mundane. It doesn't feel like a real game that people would want to play. So how would she be famous for this? And I mean, I think everything does change. Like I said, it's not really a twist at the end of the film, but it does force you to recontextualize almost everything that you've seen before. Because if you know that Allegra is not actually a game designer throughout the entirety of the film, right? She's an aspiring one. She's also a secret humanist terrorist. But the reality is that she wouldn't know everything that's going on in eXistenZ, which is the game they're actually playing. So, of course, throughout eXistenZ, which is the fake game that we see throughout the majority of the film, she's also trying to find her way because she's just a player.
And everyone, if you have not seen this movie and what Joe just said is confusing you,
Word salad.
watch the movie.
Which is, you know, it's interesting that was like, that's kind of a critique, because I also think this is totally something that like everyone
would play. Yes.
I mean, we're so obsessed with reality TV. Like, I'm so obsessed with like playing something like Animal Crossing. Like, I'm literally role playing, having to decorate my house and pay back a raccoon some loans. You know, it's just like, that's just like,
Vannah,
that's mundane life.
I was literally about to say Animal Crossing because, but this is the weird thing. Okay, so I bought Animal Crossing New Horizons during the pandemic because that's what everyone was doing. And unfortunately, like, I'm very much a person where once I beat like the main story, I'm a completist, so I'll get everything. But Animal Crossing is one of those games where it doesn't, I mean, it ends like when you have a concert, but then you can, it just keeps going because it is this kind of like fake world reality that you just keep maintaining. And for me, I get really bored with that very quickly. So like, it didn't have the same appeal to me, but I mean, it's a huge fucking gaming franchise. So clearly people do like it. I just, I couldn't get it, but that's a great comparison. I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, there's so many like simulator games, like Sims and Animal Crossing, and you know, a lot of stuff I guess is stylized, and so maybe that would be the difference here. But we are so obsessed with consuming a reality that is just a little bit different from our own. Like even just watching reality TV, or like think about how sucked in people just scroll on TikTok watching people like do DIY home renovation or baking things that are just so mundane, but like you'll watch hours of stuff about it. I don't know.
That's why though, whenever and we've talked about this before, dude, whenever there's a critique about any movie, especially a horror film, where it's like, I don't know if that person would really do that. But if you're using evidence in the film to support that argument, sure. But if you're saying, I don't know anyone that would do that, that's not real because you don't know everyone in the world.
Plus, I think Cronenberg's films are always kind of already set in a different reality. Like it's technically not 1999 in the film. You know, it's a different future. So who knows what the actual material conditions that these people would be living in, where everyone wants to just plug in to something else.
Yeah.
Not that it's like necessarily assumed that it's super dystopian or anything like that, but obviously there's, you know, snippets throughout about like factory work and class relations and you know, so I mean, so people's material conditions are seeping their way into the game. So I just mean like in this reality, because Cronenberg's movies are never really our reality,
right?
It's very possible that everyone just wants to play a game like this.
But I also think that's why it's so important that the game just does look and feel, for the most part, like the real world. And that's, I think, where those critiques are coming from, right? It's like, why would you want to leave the real world for something that is the real world, but like more mundane? But that might be the point, right? Because like, the real world sucks. So I'll take the boring version of this world.
Where I maybe get to adopt a slightly espionage identity, maybe like blow out somebody's back, figuratively or literally. I don't know. I don't understand those criticisms. I think if anything, people who had them, particularly like I remember people making them back in 99, and I think they wanted the shiny, exciting version of the Matrix, where, you know, in that world you could jump over buildings and dodge bullets, and wouldn't that be exciting? I would absolutely want to live in that world, as opposed to this world, which is fucking dirty and kind of gross, and the color scheme is very earth tones. You know, it's a lot of yellows, browns, greens, and so on. This world feels a little bit grimy, but also, like, if you know anything about David Cronenberg, it's just so fitting.
Yeah.
Okay, so Allegra says, you know, hey, let's pull up a bunch of people. Let's have you play for the very first time this game. Nobody else has ever done it except for me. So we port in, and yes, everybody is attached by these slave pods to Allegra's master pod, and everybody kind of goes into a trance. And at the door, we meet Ted Peichel, who is Jude Law, and he is technically working security, though we'll later learn that's not his designated profession.
He's also the audience surrogate, because he, as we will learn, doesn't play games, doesn't have a port. So every time he's like, how does this work? It's for us.
Yeah, but it's also very integral to the film, right? Like,
yeah.
You know, one of the big things that people note about this is how it's not just that Allegra is this master game designer and she happens to be a woman. It's that Ted Pikel is the almost emasculated, very familiar David Cronenberg archetype lead male, and he ends up having to be schooled by her and educated throughout the entire film. So it's a David Cronenberg archetype as well as the audience surrogate.
It's kind of a video game archetype in a way, you know, thinking about like the recent Legend of Zelda games. Like you wake up and you literally have nothing. You literally have no memories. You have no idea where you are, and then you immediately meet someone who's going to
a sage
tell you what to do and point you in the direction and give you the item that you need to progress and things like that. So
yeah. Yeah, so Ted is working the door. He's scanning people as they come in, not for weapons, which is foreshadowing, but for recording devices, because this is a world of espionage. All of these corporations want to steal each other's game designs and tech. So the character he scans is Noel Dichter, who is played by Chris Lemche.
You know who this guy is, right? Don't you, Joe?
I do, but I've seen him in a bunch of different things. So you tell me what you know him from.
You're going to know him from Final Destination 3. He's the asshole.
There we go. Yeah. So Noel Dichter is disappointed that he didn't make the first batch, but he sits down in the front row of this church. I do love that it's like a church where we worship our game goddess, Allegra Geller.
Yeah.
Like, this is a religion. Gaming is a religion in this movie, which is why the realists are so scared of it.
Mm-hmm.
So he sits down there and we watch as, you know, we're playing the game. We watch these pods squiggle and make baby noises. It's very unsettling and simultaneously cool. And then he pulls out a gun made of bone from his antiquated pod in his bag. He shoots Allegra in the shoulder and the event moderator a couple of times in the chest before he himself is shot down.
So I like that you mentioned earlier, Joe, you specified, like, yeah, she's a female game designer. And the movie doesn't really do a lot with that, but I find it, because I think a lot of this movie is very prescient and predicting the future.
Mm-hmm.
Vannah, does this not, like, kind of scream Gamergate to you?
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't think about that beforehand, but yeah.
So explain what Gamergate is to people like me who, if I didn't know people who were involved in the doxing, wouldn't know.
I mean, it's basically like a misogynistic harassment of women in the video game industry. It kind of started because this woman was like a big like critic and prominent figure in the video game industry, and her ex-boyfriend was angry and posted a blog post that said that she had given out a favorable review because of a sexual relationship she had with another game journalist or whatever.
Ugh.
And it started this whole thing. It was on 4chan, 8chan, Reddit, and it was basically just like, hey, women in the video game industry, you suck and you should all die. And this was about 2014, 2015.
Yeah, so I guess, like, it would beg that question, like, if she wasn't a woman in the industry, would it be perceived as evil as they're making it out, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we kind of, we figure it out at the end, if we are to believe the end of the film is quote-unquote real life, because, well, the game designer is a man, but he has a woman partner, so I don't know. But nevertheless.
Well, no, because I read Merle as his PR person, so she's not his partner.
That makes sense. But nevertheless, I mean, just something where it's like, yeah, this movie kind of predicted a lot of things that did and possibly still will happen.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Being a woman in the gaming industry, being a woman critic, like all of these things, often garbage.
Woke.
Yes.
Go woke, go broke.
All the fun stuff. Okay, so Allegra is injured, but she is not dead. But her baby, and we do refer to the game pod as a her throughout the entirety of the film, has taken a big hit. So we go on the run. So Pikel and Allegra hop into his car, and we're driving through the dark country back roads, which she says is filled with gamers. So this is where we make games. This is where we test them. This is kind of a safe place to be, or so we would think.
I was like, kind of, I guess. You got a hit squad out for you.
Yeah, so with that in mind, Pikel does bring out his phone. Not gonna lie, this thing looks like a cross between a sex toy and a regular cell phone. And as soon as Allegra sees it, she says, I don't want to be tracked. So she throws it out the window. So it's just the two of them on the run.
I think that's an important thing, though, is like, I think some people might watch this and be like, okay, just the games that are this weird, like, biotechnology kind of thing. No, it's all technology, because regular electronics degrade, but if you have a biological one, well, I guess theoretically those should degrade too, but I guess they don't.
Well, they do, but as we learn about the game Pod, that one is powered by your own body energy, right? So there's this idea that there's almost a limitless power potential within organisms as opposed to conventional technology.
Seems really interesting thinking about then like crimes of the future and like how a lot of the technology in that film like has to work with your body, like his the chair and things like that. It's like those ideas were being workshopped here a little bit.
Oh yeah, folks, if you enjoyed Crimes of the Future and you've not seen this film, you're 100% right, Vannah. They're in conversation in the same way that this is in conversation with Videodrome.
Yeah.
Okay, so we need to stop so that we can have an intimate moment, and this is the removal of the bullet from Allegra's shoulder, which is revealed to be a human tooth.
Which, gross.
Disgusting.
Such a great shot watching him dig this out of her with a pocket knife, though, because initially you think, oh, how is he going to be able to do this? But when you see it, you can actually pause the movie and you will fully see a human tooth embedded in her shoulder that he digs out. And I love this idea that, yeah, it's not just a smart way to get by sensors, but it's the continuation of this idea that, technology is malleable, and even as an organism, it can be destructive or weaponized. Okay. So we move to a generic motel to recover for the evening.
It's quite literally a generic motel. Like, it just says motel across the front.
Yeah. And Trace, you had a fun fact in your crib sheet about this.
Oh, yes. The motel is the Rosebud Motel from Schitt's Creek.
It's a small world, right?
It's Canadian world.
Well, yeah, it's a small world in that regard then. Big country, small area where we shoot things. Okay, so this is when Allegra discovers that Pikel does not have a bioport, which is industry standard if you want to get into gaming. So the fact that he is a PR trainee and he's never even played one of her games is just shocking to her.
I just love this. Do we know what year exactly this is supposed to be?
No, they never say.
Okay, because I just love that it's like the industry standard, meaning like the world, everyone has a bioport. Why wouldn't you have one? It's like getting your ears pierced.
So the reason that Pikel does not have one is because he has a phobia of having his body penetrated.
It's such specific language there too.
He does catch himself though. Like he specifies in what way, but it's like, come on, the insinuation's there.
Yeah, I mean, like, he's a gaming virgin, but also I love this idea that in order to play the game, you have to submit to having your body penetrated. Like, it's a gender neutral thing, but of course, it's this man who's afraid of having something forcibly inserted into his body.
Honestly, one of my favorite, I don't know if it's this, if not, it's coming up very, very, very soon, but he asks Allegra, like, do these things not get infected? Like, it's an open hole in your body. And she is, her response is, are you fucking kidding me? Like, opens her mouth to be like, look at my mouth. It's an open orifice. It's not infected. But I think an NC-17 version of this movie would have had her just pull her pants off and like flash her butthole at him.
Yeah, it's like we have many holes in our body that don't get affected, that are just open and accessible. But I love that. That was a trailer moment. If folks go back and watch it, that moment where she sticks out her tongue, it makes it seem like it's a highly sexual thing. And instead, it's her taking the piss out of this guy for being such a fucking idiot. I love the description of how do we get a bioport. And she just says, oh, well, we just pop your spine with a little hydro gun. Again, this is so cyberpunk.
Very much so.
So the big reason she wants him to get a bioport is because she needs to determine whether eXistenZ, her game, as well as the actual device, is working. So in order to do that, you need to play, but it needs to be with someone friendly. And again, the kind of like sexual intimacy connotations are really strong here, right? You know, do you want to play with me? Do you want to have sex with me? I need to do it with somebody who's friendly.
Yeah.
Okay, so Peichel says, all right, let's do it. It's midnight. We're in the middle of fucking nowhere, but surely there must be a country gas station where we could go and get outfitted with an industry standard bioport. Cut to a country gas station in the middle of the night. This movie's funny.
Well, I think a lot of Cronenberg's movies are funny, and people miss a lot of that because there's so much like non-funny things going on. But like, it's there. I think it's especially here in this movie, mostly from the Jude Law character.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, it's so funny. But yeah, I think a lot of the times people are mostly just so confused or
grossed out.
Like, yeah, uncomfortable that it just goes right over their head because they're just trying to hang on.
What am I watching? What's going on right now? Where am I? So we're introduced to gang devotee Gas because he works at a gas station, and this is played by Willem Dafoe, and he talks about how Allegra's game liberated him. So once again, we are embedding the language of resistance, activism, and violence throughout a lot of this talk, also about gameplay and intimacy and consent. So it's like the two warring factions at the heart of the film. So Allegra explores the gas station outside. And again, once you know that this is actually a game and she's a character, this is her just walking around a new environment and like checking out the map, right?
But at this point, we don't know this is a game.
No. This is still real life to us.
Yeah.
So when she discovers a two-headed amphibian near the gas pumps, it feels like a weird, very sci-fi moment in an otherwise realist film.
But this is like because again, Allegra doesn't freak out when she sees this. She actually keeps petting it, and I'm like, no, it's gonna bite you. But these things are common. These mutated creatures are common in this world. We just don't really get that by this point.
No. Yeah, when we get to the trout farm, which is, of course, not trout, it's all creatures like this, we will come to realize the world is filled with these kinds of things.
Which I wish they would have kind of said how that's the case. Like, was it a result of our pollution? Like, did we create this? Because that would have been, I think, another fun, like, social commentary layer to go down in this film. But it's also a 97-minute movie, so maybe we don't have time to squeeze an extra thing in here.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. We don't see any other animals except the dog, right?
Yeah, I think that seems right. But even the dog is a holdover from what we presume to maybe be the real world.
How many times are we going to say that?
I know. I'm just like, I mean, Vannah, do you think we ever see the real world in this movie?
I really don't know. I mean,
how could you tell?
If we do, I think it would just be that very end. You know, when they unveil that they're actually, testing out this other game. But I think it's more interesting to think that it could very well have become an infinite loop of endings where, where you're kind of like, lose a life and start, that kind of almost idea. So I think that would be more what he's going for. So I would say probably if we do, it would just be the ending. But I think everything is just hyper reality.
I do love that we don't do the whole if you die in the game, you die in real life.
Oh, thank goodness.
Because I just think, we've seen it too many times. So it's that we avoid that trope, I think is very good. It's a boon for this film.
Well, the other funny thing, as the two of you were debating, do we ever see the real world? I was thinking this movie should annoy us because we have all seen the, oh, it's all a dream or it was a dream within a dream sequence so much. And that's really what this whole movie is. But because it's positing really interesting questions that keep us, I guess, emotionally invested in this. Like, I don't get to the end of this movie and get frustrated because none of it fucking mattered because they were just doing a simulation as a focus group. And yet, if it had been done in lesser hands or the questions were less interesting, I would be really well, you know what? It would just be Serenity, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a testament to how well it's really done. I mean, right. I'm actually like kind of a fan of the like it's all a dream. Like,
oh, okay.
I think I always kind of enjoy it. Obviously, you know, that doesn't, you know, apply to all things. Yeah.
Yeah. Execution matters.
Sometimes it is cheap, but
right.
I love anything that is messing with reality, and that's why Cronenberg is one of my favorites. But it's just so interesting that even though I was watching a movie about a VR game, I was almost like disappointed with myself that I never saw that was going to be the ending. I was like, actually, I was like mouth agape, like, oh, like he got me. And I was just, because I was just so like in for the ride. Like I was just one of them, like going along with the ride. And like I said, I was disappointed with myself because I was like, it should be so obvious because there's so much of that, but it's not because he does it with such like finesse, I guess.
I mean, we're jumping all the way ahead of the end. I get it, but like it's kind of a thing where I love the way it's revealed because it's not presented as a big twist, which
right.
Again, I think a lesser person would have done it that way. It's just very matter of fact. So I can't remember if I expected it the first time I watched it, but it was a thing where I feel like I was like, oh yeah, interesting. But I didn't feel I was like, oh, you know, because it's not presented that way.
Yeah, I think the subtlety is what caught me off guard. Like it feels like more of a twist because it's not given to you like a twist.
If you're describing the movie to someone, you would probably present it as, and then it's revealed.
What's interesting, too, is that there's a point in this film, like I distinctively remember the first time I saw it, because I did manage to go and catch this in theaters in 99, because we had access to it in Canada. It was a big deal. It was a big fucking deal.
I'm sure it was.
But I'm going to be able to pinpoint the exact moment where I remember feeling disappointed with the film because I thought this movie doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like it lost me. I don't understand why characters are reacting the way they do. You know, it's giving off weird Jean-Luc Godard feelings where people are just jumping into the scene and causing chaos and stuff. And when you get to reflect on it in hindsight, it totally makes sense, but it's not an easy film to decipher the first time you watch it. Like, I think this is actually a very challenging and confronting film.
So the video game aspect of it, I think for the most part, that's easy to understand. But on my rewatch, the part where I was like, shit, I think I got to pause this and like transcribe it.
Like, what's happening? Who is this?
Well, and it's when... It's in the third act, whenever it's like, oh, well, this person was a double agent for this company, but this person was... And I was like, wait.
Wait, what are we talking about? Yeah, okay, pause that, because we'll come back to it.
Okay, got it.
So Allegra's outside investigating this gas station setting, and inside, Pikel is chatting with Gas. So Gas changes into some clean overalls, and then he points Pikel to this disgusting-looking run-down chair where he says, step into my office, I'm going to administer this thing so that you have your bioport. And there's a very hilarious anecdote on the Blu-ray where they talk about how they found this. It's an actual location, this gas station, and they loved it. And then, just like My Bloody Valentine, they went away and came back to shoot, and the people had cleaned it all up.
Oh, God. They were like, no, we liked how messy it was.
Literally just that. But yeah, I mean, this looks like the most unhygienic place you would ever want to do anything. So never mind, let's do something where we administer an invasive procedure on your body. So I love that this movie acknowledges how disgusting this location is. And it does help to explain why Pikel is like, well, do I want to do something that just leaves another orifice open to, you know, infection? So he does get cold feet, and Allegra ends up having to more or less talk him off the ledge. I do love the height difference. She has to climb up on top of a tire to speak to him face to face in this moment. But yeah, so she says, you know, break out of your cage, Pikel, break out of your cage. And again, comedy, we just smash cut to Pikel going face first into this disgusting chair as he gets rammed from behind, having gotten this shot.
And if for some reason any of the bloody disgusting conservatives that comment negatively in our articles are listening to this episode, which I don't think they actually do, but David Cronenberg says, yeah, people don't really notice the overt like homosexual undertones, well, overtones in the gas station scene.
Yeah, it's like he's literally like, you know, face down in the chair, moans, like he says that he loves it, like
this is porn.
Yeah.
Well, I love that it's like sex so good I lost the use of my legs momentarily.
Yeah.
Which again is like crossing interesting gender boundaries, right? Because Gas compares this to giving birth. It's a natural epidural. So that's why he can't use his legs briefly, because his body has actually corrected it on his behalf.
You know, so Vannah, we covered The Talented Mr. Ripley a couple of weeks ago in the podcast, and Jude Law almost didn't accept his role in that movie because he didn't want to be a pretty boy. And I mean, this would have been the movie he did right before that or soon before that. And I wonder, like, it's kind of a thing where it's like, I mean, for a new actor, he was picking wildly weird movies. And so I also wonder if that was like, I don't want to do Talented Mr. Ripley, like whatever. Luckily, it helped his career and it was a good decision. But I wonder what Jude Law's career would look like if he continued on the eXistenZ path.
Probably the Robert Pattinson's career.
Yeah.
Well, but he'd have to do a Twilight then. What would his Twilight be?
Oh, God. What does Jude Law's career look like right now? He's made some groaners and stuff, but it does seem like he was picking people based on, like, I want to work with this talented director.
Absolutely. But I mean, this feels like, I mean, I guess maybe because it's Cronenberg in 99, so it's not as much of a risk as if you were doing Cronenberg in, like, 84. But still, it's kind of like, this movie is weird.
Sorry, now I'm looking at his filmography to see if there's... I mean, like, he does stuff like Spy. He's the villain in Captain Marvel.
I don't even remember him in Captain Marvel at all.
He was in that Side Effects movie.
Side Effects is great. You haven't seen it, though, right?
I've not. Oh, actually, you know what? I'm not going to say that they're bad movies, but they're also kind of schlocky and people do look down on them. He's in the Sherlock Holmes films.
Oh, yeah, and that's Guy Ritchie, I guess, so, yeah, sure. I mean, he's also in the Fantastic Beasts films, which, womp womp.
Oh, boy, yeah.
Okay. Side Effects, by the way, future episode.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, so now that he's got this biopore, we can get to playing immediately. We don't have to wait for the swelling to even go down, folks. So she's already touching this thing, kind of poking and prodding at it. Yeah, this is where we get the exchange about how it won't get infected, even though it directly opens into the air. And then it's time to play. So we port in, and immediately this game pod sparks and deflates like a fucking souffle.
Yeah, so if you thought Willem Dafoe was going to be in this movie for much longer, you are wrong.
You are wrong.
Because he's a bad guy.
This is true. Yeah, so we do get some language about how Pikel panicked and neural surged, and this is what blew her pod. I do love that we give an exact figure. This game cost $38 million and took 5 years to make. And part of me was like, that almost feels like meta commentary about David Cronenberg and how long this movie maybe took to come together, because...
Okay, so the interesting thing, I thought that too, because I was like, 38 million doesn't seem like that much for like whatever this unspecified future is, but the budget for this film, while it was $15 million in American money, it was 31 million Canadian dollars.
It's when our currency exchange was real bad.
I was going to say.
Yeah, it's been above double a couple of times. Okay, so Pikel's adamant that he didn't surge, and yes, this is when Gas reveals, oh, that's because of me. I definitely fucked you up, because not only was I told that if I could sabotage your game, if I kill you or deliver you to the realist movement, I can collect a $5 million bounty on your head.
I love the way she's like, but you love the game. Like, why would you do this? And he like he actually hesitates and is like, but I do love the game. What am I doing?
Oh, but I love money more. So yeah, he's about to take her out, and that's when Pikel, even with his incapacitated legs, manages to use the stud finder to blow a hole in Gas's neck. So he's done.
Wild.
Okay. But the game is totally fucked, and Allegra is distraught. So the next morning we pull up at the ski club, and this is where Pikel notices this salamander frog lizard thing for the first time. He seems a little bit more concerned about it, and I think that's your kind of tell that, oh, this is more of a game-related thing.
Yeah.
So we go into the office and we're introduced to Kiri Vineker, who is played by Ian Holm, and he offers them a chalet to hide out in because this is actually an old ski resort. And he and his assistant Landry, who is played by Vic Sahay, end up operating on her pod. So yeah, this is where we learn what the pods are made out of, and then once it's good enough to play again, Allegra decides that Pikel's port is excited, so we once again ask if he is a friendly, and if you watch this movie a couple times, you realize, oh, this is a game prompt.
It's a game prompt.
So she lubes him up, and we stick this umbilical cord into his back. And for the first time, technically, that we are aware of, we get a smooth transition into eXistenZ.
Yes. Her licking the thing before popping it in his back, that was completely a Jennifer Jason Leigh decision. She did it in the moment during the take, and Cronenberg was like, yeah, keep that.
Hot.
Love that. Love that.
So good. Yeah. I think my favorite is still when they're in the game, technically.
Oh, and he rims it?
He rims her, but she also has like a little chapstick lube that she uses on his. I thought it was such a fun, creative use of something that's very familiar to us as an audience, put into a weird sexualized position.
I just think the packaging of them is what's so cute, because they look like little action figures like in the packaging, and it's like, here's your pod with your lube chapstick.
Yep. Okay, so now that we're in the game, our first location is a game emporium, and Allegra clarifies that, yeah, she doesn't really know what the purpose of the game is. You have to play to find out, and that's how you will win. So it should note that they set dressed this entire games emporium. There were all sorts of different games. If you look closely, you can see that there is one for the Chinese food restaurant. Will you get out alive is the tagline.
Yeah, I saw that they had done so much, and they were kind of bummed because maybe 3% of what they had actually done made it into the film.
Yeah.
So like they made like hundreds of games, they said.
It's gotta be rough to be somebody who does like set decorating or production design, because you would put so much effort into little details hoping that it would make it onto camera. But the reality is you're not just going to do a slow pan across the space and be like, look at the hundreds of games.
Well, unless you're Wes Craven and you're establishing geography.
Well, there's that. Okay, so yeah, we do see that there are mini game pods, so small versions of the ones that Allegra has designed have made their way into this game, but these games are from Cortical Systematics, and keep note of that company because they will, well, I was going to say they'll be revealed to be the antagonists in this espionage game, but the truth is we don't fucking know who anybody works for.
I was going to say, I mean, so they are the rival company to Antenna. So we know it's Cortical and Antenna, and that's it. But yeah, like at the end of the day, we don't know whose side we're supposed to be on. But again, I think that's intentional.
That's intentional. Yeah. So the store owner is Darcy Nader, and this is Cronenberg regular Robert A. Silverman. He takes them aside into an alleyway, and Pikel immediately becomes aggressive when he's questioned, even though he himself doesn't understand why he's responding this way. So Allegra, again, has to educate him. This is just your game character, and these are things that have to happen in order to advance the plot. I do like that she has this line, don't fight it, just go with it, which again is
Rapey.
kind of a recurring theme and also a game prompt throughout the
I was
film.
going to say it feels very rapey, but yes.
Oh, okay. Well, that too. I mean, he does note there's not a lot of free will in this game.
I mean, I don't know, Van. Like, what do you make of all this? Like, I mean, this whole sequence with all of the flash, because it's also like the mini pod is kind of like a flash drive, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I know we mentioned that they don't get upgrades like visually, but it's really interesting that they're like downloading new personalities and like immediately after this, he's like, when do we like feel the new personalities happen? She's like, just let it like happen.
It's
Just
like doing
happen,
drugs.
man.
Just roll with it. You'll feel it soon.
Yeah, but it's interesting, like this whole like the way they're playing with the fact that it's a video game and she as the, so we think the developer is commenting on things. Like I think she even like, she's like, you know, his dialogue sucks or his accent and so, you know, it feels very much like also it can be kind of used for like film, you know, when you're like this has to progress the plot and this has to be done and like conventions. But I also like this time around was also just feeling like this is also kind of just life. Like some people might not acknowledge you unless you like say the right things to them, and no matter what you kind of want to do, sometimes you have to do things a certain way, otherwise you won't progress in life because that's how we're told things have to be done. There's like hierarchies and, you know, thinking about like employment and work or things like that. I got like a lot of this is all about virtual reality and this is all about the anti-realism because it's causing hyper-reality. We don't know what our real reality is. But then I was like, this is all kind of just an allegory for our reality that we don't know who we are. Like, I watched the Maxine trailer and I was like, do I feel a new personality coming on? Like, you know, you know, like we kind of are just moving through life and really not sure what we're supposed to do. There are these other powers at play that are fighting with each other, these corporations or political groups, and we're just kind of
players
playing the game.
Even this idea that, you know, in order to get what you want, you either have to be aggressive, like the way he talks back to Darcy Nader, or you've got to jump each other, which is the next thing that these two characters do. So it's like you either need to be aggressive or sexual, or maybe both.
Well, and this whole sequence in this back room, like it's... we get the impression that the world is addicted to gaming, to this virtual reality. We don't really use that lingo, that terminology, but this scene, it really feels like the pods they're injecting in their backs are drug-inducing because it seems like they're rolling during this entire sequence.
Oh, yeah. And she even says, don't panic. It's just a game, which is, of course, you know, part of this altered perception, this heightened reality, as you were saying, Vannah. But I think it's also, you know, how do we feel when we start to lose touch with our bodies, or when we take something that alters our perception? Are we still in control? How do we feel about ourselves?
Yeah, which I think his original fear, not wanting to be penetrated. You know, even, you know, since in this reality that is required for the game. But I think it just speaks to a larger fear of not being in control. Yeah. Which is typically when we think of penetration, we think of that power dynamic, you know, shifting that way. So, you know, when you don't know what reality is and you don't know what personality might be coming, you don't know what you're supposed to say next, or you don't know what happened to the thing that just disappeared into your back. Like there's a lot of lack of control, and that's what he's like learning to let go of, I guess. Yeah.
I'm actually surprised that he manages to last as long as he does before he pauses the game to go back and check on his real body, because he does seem so much of a control freak. Like he very nearly does it here. And Allegra says, just stay calm. You're fine. Don't worry about it. If your body was being affected, the game would let you know because the game is so inherently tied to how you're feeling. If you start to feel tired, the game will start to power down and so on. Yeah, so we get another transition and we move to our next location, which is the trout farm. And we're introduced to a new character, Yevgeny Nurish, who is played by Don McKellar. And this may not mean anything to you two, but he is like a national fucking icon.
A national Canadian icon.
Shut up. Yes.
If it's not American, it's not real.
Oh, I guess we're all just living in eXistenZ up here north of the border. Yeah, so shocking no one, Don McKellar does not have an accent like this. So this is very much a game character. So he tells Pikel that he should go to the Chinese restaurant for lunch and he should order the special.
Which, I mean, talking about, like, offensive things, like, honestly, the special itself is kind of like xenophobic Chinese stereotypes.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Before we get there, we do need to take a quick tour of the trout farm. It's very disgusting. The conditions are not appropriate for, working with these organisms, even though people do wear gloves and stuff. We've got masks on, but it looks something like a slaughterhouse. And
for fish, or I'm sorry, amphibians.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm curious, how did the two of you find it when Pikel finally finds Allegra and she reacts like a game character where she goes into a lull when he doesn't say the right thing to her?
Okay.
Was it a tip-off?
I think it's supposed to be. Well, Vannah, what do you think?
I don't know. I mean, the first time I watched it was pretty recently, so this was just like this last Halloween season. I put it on my list because I tried to make my Halloween list movies that are so me, but for some reason I hadn't seen yet.
Yeah.
So I watched it, and I think I was just, again, like I mentioned earlier, I was just so like along for the ride that I was just like,
okay,
really not thinking. But my first thought was more along that what we kind of talked about, like where you kind of lose yourself. I feel like some other maybe video game or like cyber space type films do this. I can't think of what my brain is trying to reference, but like the longer you spend there, the
more like it you become.
Yeah, or like your tether to your real self like starts to kind of, I was like, is something like that going on? But I don't know. I was not sure.
I think you're right. I think it's where you have to really look at like the specifics of the game, because we know by this point too that you can be influenced by the game. Yes. Jude Law is being way more sexual than he is in real life because of the game. So I think it's easy to look at this and be like, oh, it's just a game thing that's happening to her. But the specific thing is, no, she's behaving almost like oh my god, what do they call it? Non-playable characters?
NPC,
an NPC. An NPC. Yeah.
Yeah, which I guess obviously on the rewatch, and you're like, oh, this is like game within a game within a game. It's just, it becomes harder to parse out like who has what role and things like that. But yeah, it should have been a tell, I guess. But yeah, I guess because I was still working out what's really going on, because I guess it still feels so early in the overall plot.
Well, and it also happens right as we shifted to a new location. So visually, this is an oasis, right? Like we're looking around trying to take everything in. So it happens almost immediately after we shift. And I think it's subtle enough that you clock it, but that you could easily forget it because we're also moving to the Chinese food restaurant.
Yeah, and I think everything that happens in there just, it wiped everything before that out of my brain, because I was just like, what is going on?
So we move in single file past the trout farm down to the Chinese food restaurant. We walk past the large dog and we go inside. This is when Peichel orders the special from the Chinese waiter, who is played by Oscar Sue. And initially he has to fight with it. But again, as you suggested, Trace, he's not just more sexual, but he's more commanding. So we know that we need to get the special to advance the plot. So we say, hey, it's actually Allegra's birthday. And I'm not going to lie, my absolute favorite part of Jennifer Jason Leigh's performance is when she's just watching, and then when he says, it's her birthday, and we cut back to her, and she's got the chopsticks, and she just goes, shwa.
Oh, okay. Yes, I'm glad that I love. Honestly, my favorite moment of hers is, did I win?
Oh, I mean, yeah.
What did I win?
So we've managed to order the special, but Peichel is not feeling it. He's still very concerned about his body, so he stands up, proclaims that eXistenZ is pause, and then he collapses on the table. And I want to just give a quick shout out because I only noticed this on this rewatch, like my 20th fucking time watching this film, when he falls unconscious onto the table. So the restaurant is still the same. Everybody is still the same. The table has actually shifted to the material of the bed, and his face sinks into it.
Oh, I didn't notice that. How neat.
It's such a great little touch because, yeah, the next time we see him is when he's waking up from, not quite being unconscious, but he and Allegra have just been lying on the bed with this game pod in between them.
Yeah.
So he immediately notes that the real world feels less real or unreal, and it feels like they're still in the game, which again, foreshadowing for where we're going to go, but the first time you don't really understand it. We think he's just having a sort of disconnect coming out of it. So we just immediately say, yeah, it's because the real world sucks. So let's get back into the game and let's find out what makes the special special.
Gross.
So it is the amphibian that we saw. The two-headed amphibian has been served up on a very grody looking platter. And I love how disgusting and uncomfortable it is to watch Peichel have to eat this thing, but he ends up constructing the bone gun out of these pieces.
They called this the gristle gun on set.
Ooh, okay. Oh, I should note that before we go back into the game, she does kiss him. So purportedly in the real world, she is becoming more sexual to advance the game.
Because that's a woman's job.
Okay.
No, that was sarcasm.
I know.
Sorry, I had to make myself very clear nowadays.
Yeah, people like to pretend like they don't understand when Trace is sarcastic. So.
I get it, yeah.
Okay, so we build the gristle gun, and he points it to Allegra and says the exact same thing that the shooter said to her back in the church before we went into this game. Death to the demoness, Allegra Geller. And I love the way that Cronenberg shoots this because when he points the gun at her, we cut very briefly to Allegra starting to lift up her giant bowl of soup. And you can tell that she's not sure she's going to have to use it. And she'll use it on the Chinese waiter.
But she might use it on Jude
But she might use it on Peichel.
Yeah. I don't know, Vannah, was this like a big clue for you too? Because I confess, I think my brain like glazed over this on a first watch. Like I knew it was there, but I thought it was like a glitch or something.
Absolutely, yeah. When I rewatch it, I was like, oh my god, like duh, like the
It's
like
obvious.
it's the same exact gun that he had at the beginning, so like that should have been a clue. But I don't know. I was just I guess I was more thinking like how things that you have encountered bleed into like the construction of the game, because that is something that they say is part of the mechanics. So so that makes it even harder to then trace what is a clue to it being a game before, or if it was reality, and all those factors are just bleeding into the new game. So yeah, I was just like, but then yeah, on the rewatch, I was like, okay, I see.
Yep.
But yeah, I think I was just so clueless I was just taking everything in the first time.
I also think that, like, I mean, look, even though we have Allegra constantly telling us, well, this is how this works, this is how this works, these are the rules of the game, this isn't really a world with very clearly defined rules.
No.
And I think that makes it harder to, I mean, because on a first watch, you'd have to, like, nitpick every single thing. So it's easy to miss something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You'd have to like take notes essentially,
yes.
and then like try to cross-reference like everything.
Some might say you'd have to do a podcast on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, there's even a moment where the film acknowledges this is getting really complicated, and our audience surrogate comments like, when all the shit at the Chinese restaurant goes down and we go back to work at the trout farm, Michael actually stands in line with Allegra and says, I'm just really anxious because I feel like I'm playing a game that I don't understand the rules of, and everybody's trying to kill me, and what the fuck is going on? And she just says, oh, it sounds like you're playing one of my games. Like, she's complimentary of herself. But also she says, it sounds like a game everyone's already playing.
That is one of those lines that I was like, oh, this is just a commentary on life. Because I was like, that's just how I feel every day, buddy. like, welcome to life, sir. Like,
mm-hmm. It's never going to get easier, Michael. You just need to roll with it, sir.
Yeah, and especially like her saying like, that's a game everyone's already playing. Like, that's so like ominous. Like, yep, we're all here struggling with you.
Yeah. Oh, none of us know what the point of life is or how do you win it? We just have to find our way through. Yeah. Welcome to the real world. Okay. So sorry, we're still in the Chinese restaurant. I feel like I was like, just when things are getting interesting, let me go back to existential questions.
No, that's what the movie does.
Yeah, so we say, I do feel the inclination to kill somebody here. And we think he might be talking about Allegra, but when the Chinese waiter comes back, we do shoot this guy a couple of times in the face. But he does get a chop in with the cleaver, so we take out part of the gristle gun, which in very Videodrome-esque ways begins to bleed, like it is also a living organism.
So everything in this movie is a living organism.
Truly. Yeah. So the dog does run away with it. And I love this moment where everyone is just frozen. This is very Matrixy, where it feels like all of these NPCs are just kind of, what do we do?
It feels like Serenity to me.
Shut up. So Michael just orders them. Oh, it's fine now. You can go back to your meal. And then we see Yevgeny Nourish motioning at them from the kitchen. So he prepared them the special dish with the gristle gun. So this, I'm going to say, is where the film starts to get quite complicated.
Yes.
So we learned that the Chinese waiter was an assassin and that we had to take him out. And Yevgeny Nurse says that he is a member of the realist underground and they have to go back to the trout farm because it is owned by Cortical Systematics, aka the competitor of Antenna. And they are enemies of reality. So we need to go back in there, gather more information so that we can win this war.
Okay, so I love this because the assumption here is that these video game companies, these makers, are anti-reality, and that to me is not an inherent like, oh yeah, that like I would. It's just not a presumption
you should just make.
Yeah, but it seems like, I mean, like, again, what are politics like in this world? Like, is this the politics?
Maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean it's a very real, I think, sentiment to have. You know, we kind of have been having a lot of those same conversations, I guess, that the things that we create inherently alter our reality, or like even like thinking about morals, or like video games are making kids violent. So if we have a lot of active protest to the content of our games and media, and so if the content in this context is just alternate reality, then I can see the very easy, you know, line to being anti, you know, whatever. Right. Yeah. But also, like, how cool of a name is Realist Underground. It's
the name of my punk band, right?
That's what I was gonna say. That's like a perfect band name.
So to me, this is the moment where, yeah, the film does get very confusing from this point on until the twist reveal at the end. But I would also say this is the part that's the most obviously connected to Videodrome, right? We have competing companies. So we've got Antenna and Cortical Systematics instead of, the Oblivions versus Spectacular Optical in Videodrome. But I love this idea that once again, it's the regular Cronenberg protagonist who gets caught in the middle but turned into an unwitting assassin between two companies who are at war with one another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, even the line, death to...
Yes.
Allegra. It's like, death to Videodrome, like death to Allegra Geller, like long live the new reality.
Flash. Yeah.
Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's so funny, right? Because I think it still works in this film, even if you haven't seen Videodrome or you haven't seen it in ages. But I guess I just also really love the fact that this is his first original screenplay since Videodrome. And he's like, oh, I've still got things I need to work out from that film, which is more than a decade old.
Yeah, it's like he, and similar with Crimes of the Future, it's like he has a central philosophy that he is very, or like he has a human problem he's very concerned with.
Mm-hmm.
And each, new shift in technology, he feels the need to apply that commentary to it. And so at the time that he made Videodrome, television and a broadcast, that was a very relevant conversation, like censorship, and then in the 90s and the changing game industry and what is reality, I feel like that was a very relevant conversation. And then he just keeps, now technology, we're really focused on.
It's like wellness and art and
yeah, it's like he knows what he's about. And every time our society does something that scares him, he's like, okay, I gotta adapt.
I gotta work it out.
Yeah, I gotta adapt my ideas to this new technology that we're grappling with. And I just love it.
Yeah. And you obviously mentioned Possessor earlier, Vannah, and of course that movie is all about using technology to execute people in espionage wars and stuff that don't ultimately matter. So
yeah, and he even casts Jennifer Jason Leigh in that, and it's just like I feel like it's almost a very clear it's
a tip of the hat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now that we've got this reveal by Yevgeny Nourish that, okay, so we need to go back to the trout farm and so that we can go up against Cortical Systematics because there are bad guys. But let's touch base with Darcy Nader because he gave us our original marching orders to go to the trout farm, right? So we head back to the game emporium, except we can't find Darcy Nader. We find a cashier named Hugo Carlaw, who is played by Callum Keith Rennie. Again, super famous Canadian character actor. And Hugo Carlaw reveals that Darcy Nader, the store owner, is actually dead because he was a mole for Cortical Systematics and he was moving against the Realist Underground, to whom Hugo Carlaw is a member. So he's like, okay, you killed your contact. The Chinese waiter was actually working with you and you were not meant to kill him as Yevgeny Nourish commanded you to. And if anyone listening to this is like, what the fuck are you saying?
That's me.
This is the point in the film where I think it's actually really starting to blur and get confusing. But I think it's very, very deliberate because this is where all of the intersecting points of what is actually happening in the game versus real life, but also what have the real life Allegra Geller and Ted Pikel brought into this with their anti-game rhetoric.
I think that's why, though, on a rewatch, even though I do find all of this, it's corporate espionage, confusing bullshit. It's like you watch an episode of Alias and didn't watch last week's episode.
Yeah.
But knowing by the end, none of this fucking matters, I'm kind of like, it's fine. I'll just keep watching the movie.
Yeah. This to me is a slight bit of a stumble because I don't know if we really needed to go back to the Emporium to reveal that Darcy Nader is actually dead. If anything, it feels like this is an excuse so that we can introduce Hugo Carlaw because he will come back later. I don't know if it's like this was an edit or this was just, I want to make sure I can fit in a couple of my regulars in fun ways, but the film could have streamlined a little bit, and we maybe didn't need to jump back here.
Yeah.
Okay. So we do head back to the trout farm. This is when Pikel says, I'm anxious. I don't really know what's going on. And she's like, yep, roll with it. So we go into the trout farm and we discover, okay, we need to find this game pod because, hey, right, that's still an objective in this game. So we end up looking around the trout farm and we find it, and it's very diseased. And just like a game prompt, Allegra says, ooh, I really want to port into this thing. And we cannot overstate, this pod is gross.
Yes, it is.
Like, the idea that she would want to stick any part of this thing into her own body is vulgar. It's just very offensive to me.
But she's got like a personal, well, I was going to say just like a personal relationship with this pod of her own. So she's like, I mean, she treats it like her own baby, which again, when you know that she's actually a realist, maybe.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Well, that's where this theme of infection keeps coming from, right? Is like, it's infecting reality, but it's also infecting our bodies the more that we use it. What's interesting too is if, again, you understand that we're actually in the game right now. Mm-hmm. This is her original game pod. This isn't the one that we've seen in the game world. So remember, we had the little mini pods with the new identity changers. We've never seen her full size game pod until this moment in this world.
Yeah.
You're both like, that's too much. I can't follow.
I feel like I already have to rewatch it because I'm like, but I mean, I also like, I think she's just kind of a little freak. I don't know. It's like kind of this morbid curiosity thing.
Oh, sure.
Well, but she says I have an urge to port into it. So that, again, I took that as it's just the game. It's your game character. This is what your game character would do.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And this is kind of weirdly sexual as well, right? Like this idea that you want to do something that you know probably isn't a great idea. It's not going to be good for you. And predictably, it doesn't go super well. So she ports into it and then she can't get it out and it makes her feel sick. And we end up having to cut through this umbilical cord. But because it's attached to her physical body, she begins to bleed to death. Yeah. So we try to, tie off this umbilical cord. It's very much like what you would do after you give birth. And then this is when Yevgeny Nourish bursts in. And because he is a member of the realist underground, he has a flamethrower. He burns this pod. It releases infected spores everywhere. And also, he's going to try to kill Allegra because he knows who she is. So we have to stab him in the back and the whole room goes up in flames.
These spores too, man. Like, ugh.
Yeah, they're icky.
Yeah.
So this seems to have accomplished a goal, or it's a natural point where we can exit this game. So we are back in the hotel room at the chalet and things seem to be okay. Except for the fact that, oops, we maybe brought the infection back because now our real life game pod looks sick. Except then we realize, oh, maybe it's not something we brought back from virtual reality. It's that Pikel's bioport seems to have been infected, which means that Kiri, the Ian Holm character, gave him an infected bioport just like Gas did. So
literally both times he's tried to get a bioport, these people have fucked him over. I just feel so bad that Pikel's never going to know what a real port feels like. I'm sorry, this version of Pikel.
Right. Yeah. I guess this movie is just advocating for abstinence because you should never fuck a game because it just always ends badly.
That's the mantra of every Cronenberg movie, abstinence.
Or very careful sex, yeah. So we're going to have to deal with Yuri, but before we do, we should plug up that infection. So Allegra sticks a little thing in the back of Pikel's back and she says, don't worry, this will clean out your system and give you a mild hum. Don't worry, you'll be good as new in a couple of hours.
Sure. The movie's over in like 10 minutes.
I was going to say, we don't even get a beat to process this because there's an explosion. All of a sudden, that cashier from the Games Emporium, Hugo Carlaw, who's dressed now in military garb, busts in. He shoots up the game pod. So it's very similar to what Yevgeny Nourish just did with the flamethrower. And he claims that he is part of the realist underground. So it's like, wait, what? We brought that out of the game and into the real world now. So we have to go on the run. all of these chalets are now on fire. And Hugo Carla says he's going to kill Allegra because he knows exactly who she is. Very similar. And this is when Kiri shows up with a gristle gun and he takes this guy out. And it's like, at this point, it's so fucking confusing. It's like, what is happening?
And it's like, oh, he's actually like, he's defecting to cortical systematic. So he wasn't her side, but now he's not. It's like, you couldn't have told her that before you infected this pod. Like, okay, whatever.
Well, he infected the pod, he reveals, because he duplicated the game and then poisoned the system so that she couldn't give it to Antenna. And this was all an attempt to lure her to come and work for Cortical. I know, it's a big old lot of sure.
It's a big roundabout way to do that.
It's true. So she doesn't like being lied to or treated this way. So she grabs the gun from Hugo Carla and she just blows Kiri away. She's like, yep, you're done.
Yep.
And Peichel kind of freaks out on her. He says, you know, you might have just killed a real human being. And she keeps saying, well, he was only a game character, so it doesn't matter anymore. Because she's convinced that they're still in the game now.
Yeah. So then what's the big reveal we get now?
Okay, so the big reveal is, once again, someone is a realist, only this time it is Ted Peichel. He says he orchestrated most of this so that he could stay close to her, get her secrets, kill her when need be, all in the name of the realist underground. But she has already, psych, duped him. The thing she put in his back is actually an explosive, and she just slams down on this receiver, and his whole back goes out.
He gets his back blown out, literally.
Yeah.
Death to the demon Ted Peichel. And then, we just had this, like, joyous, like, gleeful... Okay, so I love Jennifer Jason Leigh, but I feel like I very rarely get to see her do this, which is just the, have I won? Have I won the game? And she's like jumping around like a little schoolgirl. It's so adorable.
Yeah. So we do note at this point that all of a sudden she's wearing hardware on her wrist and her head. And I think we as an audience realize, oh, we have been duped. So they come out of the simulation and we are back at the church. We should note they actually have two different churches. So the one that you see at the beginning when they are first, talking about her as the game designer and she goes up on stage with the ski boot and everything, that's a smaller version of the church. So they actually built a second church for this other scene, but it's meant to mirror the first one. So everybody wakes up. We get to see all of these people that we thought died, like an hour ago or something. They were all just participants in this focus group, which is being led by Merle, who is played
by
in
Sarah
a very
Polley.
Small cameo by Sarah Polley. And we also see that Yevgeny Nurish is, in fact, a real person. He was not a player. He is the famous game designer. So he is the god. He is the real-life Allegra Geller. And in fact, Allegra and Ted are just a real-life couple who were the featured players of this focus group.
I think I felt like disappointed the first time I watched this because I was like, fuck you, David Cronenberg. Not like really, fuck you, David Cronenberg, but I was like, you got me. Mm-hmm. But I like that we just continue this loop.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if we had just ended with this, it would have been disappointing.
Yeah. The final bit is almost a joke, honestly.
Mm-hmm. So it's revealed that we have been playing a game called Transcendence, capital C, capital Z. And this is by Pilgrimage with a capital P, capital I. Always very important to capitalize within these game titles.
It makes it so hard to type notes, by the way.
It's true. And Pilgrimage looks fucking stupid when you capitalize that I must say.
Well, because it looks like Power Rangers gear.
That too. So Allegra and Ted get high marks for leading the game, although Yevgeny does tell Merle that he's concerned by this anti-game rhetoric that seemed to work its way in. So even though Transcendence is a different game, or we're led to believe, it seems like it has the same sort of founding principles where people get to control the narrative based on what they bring to it, even if they're game characters may have like early exits, like, the guy who was conducting the focus group, Christopher Eccleston. Mm-hmm. So Ted and Allegra go and collect their dog, who is the same dog that we saw outside of the Chinese restaurant. Mm-hmm. And then they confront Yevgeny Nurish about all of the harm he's done, and doesn't he think he should be punished for it? And before he can really respond, they pull off an extra flap of hair from this dog to reveal a holster with guns on it.
Real guns, though, not gristle guns.
Not gristle guns, no. So we shoot Yevgeny Nurish, we shoot Merle, and then we say, "Death to the demon, Yevgeny Nurish." And it's like, wait, what the fuck is going on? Which is more or less where the movie ends, with the guy who was playing the Chinese waiter who asks, "Are we still in the game?"
And then we just cut to Michael and Allegra looking uncertain, cut to black.
Vanna, what was your reaction the first time you finished the film?
I mean, I don't know if shocked is like a right term. I just was a little, it was mostly the new game, like that reveal, like
right.
with the new, it was like the new hardware where I was like, oh, okay, like there's something like, it's not just like everything before. I think it's almost like The Boy Who Cried Wolf, with like all of these other times that they are like porting.
Mm-hmm.
So now that there's just like this totally different hardware that they're using, I'm like, oh, this is like way beyond, or like there's such a broader, I guess, reality happening outside of everything we just watched, I guess. And then I guess my other takeaway was it's all fun to think like, oh, everything we just watched was part of the game, or even for the characters themselves, like in world, being like, oh wow, like that was such an elaborate, you know, like rabbit hole we just jumped through,
right?
Like an Inception kind of thing of this game. But I was thinking about how bleak it is to like live in a world where, if we are to believe that this last scene is reality, that you as a person would not be able to tell that you actually exited the game. Like, I just thought, like, obviously that plays into my idea that this could also be a game, and that it's like it is an almost infinite loop. But I just thought like how sad that is, you know, that you will never be able to tell, I guess. I don't know. I was like just thinking about that question, like, are we still in the game? Like, you know, everything beforehand was like to dupe us. But that was just like technically, I guess, genuine confusion of reality in a way.
But I guess too, for me, like, I don't even view this as kind of one of those like it was all a dream movies, because at least in this, we know that the real person does fuel a part of their game character. And yes, like the game influences them in certain ways to do and say certain things, but at the end of the day, they're all still playing a part. Now, I guess the question is, do Michael and Allegra in the movie we've been watching, are they both aware that they are playing a game? Or is that strictly for the audience, for us to be like, are they playing a game or are they not playing a game? Like, do we believe both Michael and Allegra are conscious of the fact that they are on a mission in this game right now? Again, that's assuming their mission in the coda for this movie is what they actually are, because it could still be them in a game.
And for me, the telling scene then becomes right before we kill the Chinese waiter, when Michael points the gristle gun at her and she grips that bowl of soup. Because to me, it's very transparent that, oh, this is their real personalities, where they do have the inclination to kill someone and they do want to go after the game designer. And it's almost a flight or fight response. So I read that as, okay, so that's how you know that they are legitimately assassins in quote unquote the real world at the end of the film. But then that uncertain or questioning look on their face that the movie ends on, it upends everything all over again. And it's like, wait, are these just game characters again? Like, are we just playing a fun game where we get to go around shooting people? Because to me, it's like, oh, well, that's the appeal of something like a Grand Theft Auto. You just want to drive around, run people over, you know, slap a sex worker and punch a cop. And it's like, I would never do this in real life, but in a game for sure. And I don't know, it kind of does spin me out in a million different ways. Like, is this good? Is this bad? Is it maybe not any of those things? Is it just commentary about, okay, how do we feel about these games changing us as a person?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I have a very different perspective on this with our like actual media, but in, the mechanics of the game here, like thinking about that mention of, you're a real person or what you bring into the game can influence it.
Mm-hmm.
But also thinking about something that is so, it's so hyper real. It is also so integrated. Like you literally plug it into you.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about like, what is the feedback loop? Like, yeah, you as a person are bringing things into it, but what are you bringing back out of it that you will then bring back into it with the next thing you play, which is why the lines continuously get blurred for people, which is like exactly what the, realists are fighting against.
Would the game just eat itself after a certain point? Because you would go into the game with your real life personality, but that would change the narrative of the game, and then you would be changed when you come out of it, and then your new changed real life personality would influence the next game.
Yeah, like it gets fishy there.
Amphibious even?
Yeah.
A frog eating its tail, yes.
Eating a lizard, yeah. I hate us right now.
But I mean, nevertheless, I'm sorry, everyone, that is eXistenZ. But
that
Vannah,
is it.
I mean, what are your, because this is like me, you're a recent convert to this film. Final thoughts on this film, its lasting impression on you.
I just love it. Like I mentioned, Cronenberg is one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
I had watched it after like being a long time Cronenberg and Videodrome fan, but I had also I saw it after I had already seen Crimes of the Future too, so I think it was really interesting to go into it with that perspective of what he was doing before and what he's done after with the same kind of idea. Yeah, I love it. It was instantly a favorite. I love body horror. I love all of his gross little fleshy creations. It's just perfect. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Brandon Cronenberg's works too. He only has 3 feature-length films. I've been thinking a lot lately about the thematic through line of his 3 films and then how those relate to this unofficial trilogy that we've been kind of talking about with eXistenZ. Right. Yeah, there's a whole think piece in my brain about that probably can't get into here, but it's just so interesting. This is the thing that makes my brain buzz. I love it.
Well, and actually this year we might have some more to compare it to because Caitlin Cronenberg's Humane comes out this year.
I know. I can't wait. I'm just
so
I love this freaky little family. I love it.
Yeah, no, I really like this. I do prefer it to Videodrome, though, as we've discussed, I've come around to Videodrome over the years. I just think that this is a fascinating little movie that I feel like if I spend too much time thinking about it, I won't stop thinking about it just because of the endless possibilities of what the narrative implies. But
maybe you're in a loop, Trace.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm in a loop, exactly. I do think it's very prescient. I do think it's very relevant today, and it's a fascinating film. So yeah, if you've never seen this movie, definitely check it out. It's great.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, this is something of a return to form for Cronenberg. I do prefer him when he's operating off of his original screenplays, although, he's got a bunch of really good films that other people wrote for him and so on. But yeah, this one, I just love how it's in conversation with the same ideas that he's always had. Like you said, Vannah, this is an unofficial trilogy, and there's something so exciting about how he continues to revisit the same ideas, albeit in new ways with different actors and different themes. And I don't know. I mean, I can definitely understand if people watch this film and they think, oh, it's a bit ugly. It's a bit plain Jane. I don't understand. Couldn't he have zhuzhed it up and made it a bit more visually exciting? But I do think that that's the point, because these people are bringing this sort of sad reality into it. Like, so much of what's driving them as people is influencing the game. And that's why it looks so much like a normal lived reality. And I think that's a really fascinating take for something, because usually in these kinds of films, we like to go big and shiny and new and stuff. But yeah, I'm rambling. So I'll just say I really enjoy this film. I'm happy that more people are discovering it. And happy 25th eXistenZ.
Happy 25th. But yeah. Well, before we announce what we're covering next week, Vannah, thank you so much for coming on to talk about this with us. And let everyone know, where can they find you on social media?
Yeah, so you can find me on pretty much any of the various social media sites that pop up all the time. Anywhere you can find me at Siren Death Cult. And then you can find my podcast, the Carnal Extremities Podcast, at Carnal EX Pod on Instagram and Twitter. Yes. Or X, whatever you call it.
You know what? The URL is still Twitter, so I will call it Twitter.
Yeah. Fuck Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to get in touch with us, you can reach us on Twitter and Instagram at HorrorQueers. Shoot us an email at horrorqueers@gmail.com. Find us on Letterboxd to keep track of all the films we've covered. And if you want to chat with other listeners, please join our Facebook Horror Queers group. If you have a moment, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you want even more content, please support the show by becoming a patron at patreon.com/horrorqueers. We are almost done with April, but if you subscribe today, you will get 305 hours of Patreon content, including this month's new episodes on Hannibal Season 1, Episode 4, Late Night with the Devil, Femme, Abigail, The First Omen, and, to tie in with The First Omen, our audio commentary for the month will be on the original The Omen.
Mm-hmm.
But Joe...
Yes.
Heavy hitter next week, and it's also 1999. What are we discussing?
I was going to say, if you didn't realize, 1999 is a bit of a fucking banger year for films, folks. So yes, the 99 extravaganza continues. We're changing pace dramatically so we can talk about the incredibly bisexual film, The Mummy.
Yes, Stephen Sommers' The Mummy. One of my most fondly remembered movie-going experiences as a kid. Not because it was like
just so good.
I feel like watching that movie was like watching magic when I was 10 years old.
Oh my god. The fact that this movie made so much money is not a surprise to me, because it truly feels like what we would expect a new Indiana Jones film to be. And then you watch the new one and you're like, oh, yeah, The Mummy did it better.
Well, and also here's the thing, though. The Mummy, while being a PG-13 horror film, has some grotesque stuff happening in it. It scared the shit out of me.
Yeah, if you don't think that this is a horror film, it's probably definitely a gateway horror film. Yeah. But yeah, those scarabs haunt my dreams.
Yeah, if you want to see what that movie looks like when it's done not well, watch The Mummy Returns.
Oh boy, or don't.
Anyway, until next week, everyone, we can cross out eXistenZ.
Indeed, and cross out horror queers.